All right. I've got Tyler here with me from 21 Pilots.
Hello.
Okay, dude, you took quite a spill last night on stage.
Yeah, I did.
You
Uh,
you
and
tripped over Josh's drumsticks, right?
yeah, I mean, listen, it's I'd like to say that it was like several people's fault. Maybe it was like a communal mistake, but the truth is this: it was one person's fault, and that person plays the drums in my band. So no, he
How
feels
are you
terrible about
feeling
it. He
though?
feels terrible about it, so I'm giving him a hard time because he feels, you know, when someone like feels so bad about doing something wrong, you just want to like make them feel even worse.
Oh, of course.
Kind of how this is going. I'm
That's
doing.
friendship.
What the heck is that, me or you?
I don't know
Um,
what that tone means, but how are you feeling though?
I am. I'm doing pretty well. So I mean, the story, as the story goes, I think it was maybe the song "Heathens." The drumstick kind of like popped out of his hand and fell out in front of him on stage, and then it stayed there for the next song, "Trees," where I kind of like am running down, you know, across the stage, and I ran, and there's a lot of like cryo, you know, like and fog on the ground and just like a lot going on, and I just didn't clock it, and I ran and I jumped to go up on top of another riser, and that foot that I planted happened to land right on his drumstick, and I sprained my ankle and then fell and then had to like grab onto the stage to not fall off of it, and that's, I sliced my knee open, and so all just, you know, rock and roll, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. My first instinct was I laughed when I saw the video, and then I went, "Oh my god, I hope he's okay!" Like right
No,
after.
they've been sending me videos of like people editing like the sound where it
Oh, it's
says
hilarious.
just like this skid mark thing of your shoes
Sneakers on a basketball court.
up.
Yeah.
It's just so good. I love the internet for stuff like that.
Right? It can be so good for those moments. And you have a show tonight, right? So like you're ready for the show?
Yep, I'm ready.
All
I
right,
mean, we'll
awesome.
see.
So everything that you guys put out is always very intentional. You guys always have a full length thought process that goes into everything that you've put out. So with that being said, what can you say is your favorite or most impactful song from Scaled and Icy?
Um, oh, that's a good question. I think it would probably either be Shy Away or Redecorate. And for different reasons, I think Redecorate, it was the last song on the record that we did, and you know, sometimes you can work on music and be working on lyrics while you're working on music. Other times you'll just work on the music, and then in post try to figure out, okay, what is the song trying to say, and trying to apply lyrics in that way. And then other times, which is my favorite thing, is when you already have the lyrics written out, almost like it's a poem first, and then you try to find the music inside of it. And that's what happened with Redecorate. I already had all of those verses written to no music at all, which is hard to do, by the way, for me, because I my default is to sing lyrics, but to really force myself to sit down and, you know, write out lyrics, I always feel like I say what I'm trying to say more clearly when I do that. There's almost like the emotion of the song isn't necessarily, uh, it's not influencing what you're saying, but then I don't know. So for it to go in that order is always exciting for me because it doesn't always happen that way. So that's why I Redecorate. And then Shy Away, I will say that it's probably the first song that we did where Josh and I recorded the whole thing ourselves, and Josh's drums were in his studio, I was in my studio, and it was our first time like, hey, let's just see if this works, where you're at your house, I'm at my house, we're kind of building this song out together. And every sound, you know, we didn't have any outside producers come in and help us with it. It never stayed more true to just me and Josh and our creativity than and then that's really what the whole record turned out to be. But Shy Away was the first song that we really was like, well, let's just try this. Let's see if we can get this to feel right with really not doing this, you know, in person. And so, although I will never pick to write a record, you know, remotely again, I think to have that tool in our arsenal is cool. And I
Yeah,
think,
because you never know what's gonna happen. I think the pandemic showed us that.
Yeah, and then also, you know, inspiration can strike at random times, and if we live in different areas, basically, you know, it gives it still provides us an opportunity to still work, and so
Right.
that's what the pandemic taught us. I mean, one of many things, but we learned how to utilize the technology that we have to still create.
So speaking of the pandemic, you spoke in a Zane Lowe interview years ago about how the process of isolation helps with a creative process for you. So a fan actually brought this up and it piqued my interest. What would you say is the difference between you put yourself in self isolation when you did Trench, but Scaled and Icy, I'm sure a lot of that was during the pandemic when you were kind of forced into isolation.
Yeah, that's a good question. There was something a little each one had its own set of, kind of like a different flavor of anxiety.
Mm,
Obviously the anxiety that came with the pandemic. I mean, listen, it's gonna be hard to describe exactly what that feels like, but we all kind of know what it feels like. But I think maybe to best describe it was, um, there was such uncertainty in the future that it really made the present feel like, what's the point? And when that starts to happen, you can really, that's dangerous territory. But on the plus side, if there is a plus side to the whole thing, there was something semi comforting knowing that everyone was going through it. There was this almost
right.
communal pause and a communal isolation. Um, and then the record before that with Trench, where I really decided to, in a sense, isolate with really not knowing what it is I was doing, or at least not having the perspective of what I was doing until after the pandemic. But when I was isolating for Trench and really just kind of focusing on working on that, it was kind of like a self-inflicted wound type of thing where I was deciding to isolate. And am I making the wrong decision by isolating? Should I be shaking this up and collaborating more? And so there was a different sense of uncertainty with whether or not the creative decisions being made inside of Trench were correct or not. And the the uncertainty during Scaled and Icy with the pandemic was, um, I don't know, it was just more global and kind of, I don't know. So yeah, I guess I don't know if I'm describing it right, but two different experiences for sure. But still, and that's the power of music. You have something to show for it at the end.
After being forced into isolation, do you think you'll ever do self isolation again?
Um, Maybe not to that extent, but I do feel I am a big believer in the more people you have in the room when something is being created, the potential you have for that thing to be watered down. And what I mean by
Right.
that, and I'm not against collaboration, but what can happen is the simple fact of proximity is exciting. So when you're near someone that's creating something and you watch them create it, that's exciting in itself. Oh, that's cool. And then you hype yourself up when really you lose the ability to step back and look at the thing you're creating and ask, is this good or not? And if you've got like three or four, hype people in the room telling you it's great, they might not know whether or not it's great. They're just excited that it happened in front of them. And so with
Right.
that, you can kind of like the echoing and the feeding back can kind of, by the time you're like done with the product and you're listening to it or you're sitting with it by yourself, you're finally able to be critical the way that you want to be critical. And you realize maybe this isn't that great. That's just something that I've experienced, something that I'm, conscious of when creating. And so maybe I might not be fully isolated in the future when I make music. I always feel like I started writing songs because it was a way for me to communicate in a way that I couldn't otherwise. And I think it's always going to be that. And because of that, it needs to come from me. And because of that, there's probably just not going to be many people in the room at all when I'm creating.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. If it's from you, it should always be you that kind of has that moment. There's something special about doing it yourself too. So
Yeah,
with tour,
there's really not like if it fails, it's your fault. It's
yeah,
exciting.
with tour, you're on the Icy Tour, which is accurately named now that you've slipped and fallen on stage.
I didn't even connect that until now, but
But I have a question about like the setup. You know, the big thing that I keep seeing everywhere is you on the air mattress
yeah.
crowd surfing. And as someone who's crowd surfed herself, that
Mm.
looks like an easy way out, my dude. Like you,
It is
that is an easy way to crowd surf.
way less like intrusive. Let's just say that.
Where did that idea even come from? Is it because you're over the crowd surfing idea? Is it partially because of COVID? Like, where did that even come from?
No, you know what it is? I wanted to, it's not like that. I wasn't over it or whatever. It's my in-ears and my body pack that I have to have in my ears in order to actually like perform. There's really no solid way of making sure that someone doesn't rip that stuff off your body when you're crowd surfing. And then when
That
you're
makes
done crowd
sense.
surfing, and that body pack is like $900 each. And I've lost so many of them. And at that point, I'm just like, I'm gonna buy a $50 air mattress, and it's gonna save me thousands of dollars. This is not my just making this noise. This is someone else.
It's okay.
Uh,
I almost feel like you figured it out then. You figured out an issue
so yeah,
that
so
everybody's had.
cost efficient to be on the air mattress rather
And
than
more comfortable.
yeah, comfortable. I mean, it's a little ridiculous, but you know, here you are.
That's also part of the fun. Yeah, that's part of the fun of it is that it's so ridiculous that I'm like,
How
I
can
have
you
to
not-
ask him,
How can you not
what the
remember
hell?
for someone to do that? Yeah.
Exactly. And with the tour, you guys go all out with the setup and the way that you want everything to look. Do you find it hard to kind of convey what you have in your head to the person that then has to kind of bring that into fruition, make that real life? Like, how do you explain that to somebody when you have this whole idea in your head of what everything should look like? Because you've mapped everything out. I know you map everything out from start to finish with the album, with the songs, the way everything's going to flow. I know you map out the tour as well. So how do you kind of convey that to someone in a way that makes sense?
It's a good question. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot. It's uncool how many emails I type about our show. It's just if you knew that I was emailing about the show, there's something about it that like the veil is lifted and the show sucks now because I know the lead singer emails about it. I mean, that's so dumb. But the truth is that I like to make sure that all apartments are on the same. I mean, at this point, at this level, you got a lighting department, you've got an LED department, you got a special effects department, you got a sound department, security department. I mean, just there's so many people that need to at least be in lockstep with what you're trying to accomplish. And a lot of people in our position, we would start hiring out the creative aspect of it as well, where we would have maybe a music director, someone who creates the tracks, and someone who kind of like carves out the flow and the rhythm of the set and all of that, and then basically tells us what we're going to do, and then we get up there and do it. Josh and I are so against that. We want to continue to have our hands on what the set list is. We have our hands on the tracks themselves. I mean, when I come up with an idea of like, hey, what if we move from this song into this song? Or I know that this song is in this key, which will work really well with this song. Like, in order to maintain control of all the creative decisions that go into a live show, you really have to continue to learn how to cast a vision to a big group of people. And it takes just a lot of extra communication. And I mean,
Very detailed emails.
you should ask some of these emails, some of these guys that we're playing with now, because we have some other players up on stage with us now, but I mean, they laugh about it, but I mean, I've sent them, I get in my photo booth on my laptop, and I record videos of me explaining what, and then for this part, and then this, and I do a whole video of me explaining the whole song or the whole set and what I want to accomplish. And then I do a separate video where I'm just playing it through without explaining anything so that they have something to practice to. I mean, I'm like basically like
You're very thorough.
I'm a
That
teacher.
is
I'm a camp counselor of over there.
So I know we have to wrap this up, and I feel like I can ask you 1,000,001 questions because there's just so much to get into. But I gotta ask, with the next album, and I hate doing this because I know we're so focused on this one right now, but with the next album, I know that you said that you are always constantly on the internet. You're looking at what fans are saying, you're looking at what they think is going to happen next, what they already think about the albums that you've put out. I don't want to ask for any details. That's on you. I'm not going to do that to you. But are there fans that are kind of in the right direction with where you're going with the next album? Or is
As
everybody going to be totally off, like, blow, like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting where this is going?
you're talking about like the narrative of the story behind.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's people that are on it. I think that I've been hinting at it more and more as we release each record and as we dive more and more into the narrative and the story and the story of Clancy and Dima and all of the bishops and everything that kind of has always been there for every release of ours. Each release that we have, we've been more and more, upfront about that storyline because we feel like we've really trimmed down our fan base. So like, at least they know. I've never wanted to write a whole record that there was a prerequisite to enjoy the record, where you had to know all this storyline. And so I always wanted to write a record that someone who didn't know it could still enjoy the record. I think as I moved about, though, I got more and more like, well, at this point, I know who I'm writing a record for, and it seems like they know what's going on. So I will say the next record will probably be the most upfront, the most clear, and just talking about the players and what the story is, and it will be the last record of this story, and so it will like tie it all up. And in order to do that, I want to make sure that we're very clear in explaining what's going on. And I think some of the hunches for where it's going are probably correct, and some of them are way off. And this story it's been written for a while, and I'm excited to. I'll be very proud of it. It's one of those endings where like the bow goes on, and kind of, I don't know, you'll argue with me, I'm sure, once it happens, but I will feel like the bow is on, and I'm proud of it, and that is what it is, and I'm excited for it.
But that's what matters, right? That's what we were talking about, is you being proud of what you're putting into it because it's yours.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, I feel like I could literally sit here for like the next 2 hours and have conversations with you about everything. And though we do not have that time, I appreciate the time that you're willing to give.